Hey, everybody, welcome to the CSM Mastermind, our last one for 2021. My name is Andrew Marks. I'm the co-founder of Success Hacker and our success coaching training program. We're back for our monthly live webcast today talking about customer success etiquette. This free learning event is brought to you by Success Coaching, the global leader in customer success professional development training, now with more than 10,000 students globally. Our virtual 3-day intensive boot camps run monthly. Our 12-week live coaching cohorts start up again in February, now being delivered under the University of San Francisco School of Business. We just are dropping that press release today, so we're super excited about that partnership. We have an accredited online CSM certification program, growing number of standalone courses, all taught by industry experts. You can find out more at successcoaching.co about our training programs. Ashley will drop a link into the chat right now. For those of you new to this series, this is a live and unscripted discussion where we dig into a single topic that is relevant to customer success. This opening is the only scripted element of the webinar. Everything else is a free-flowing exchange of information, ideas, stories, examples, and best practices. We aim to pick topics that are going to be practical and useful to the broader customer success community. So I encourage you to suggest topics or panelists for these events. We have come up with our 2022 topics. And if you'd like to participate as a panelist, Ashley is going to drop a link in chat again where you can express your interest. The schedule for our upcoming events can also be found at successcoaching.co. Click on the events tab at the top of the page to find out more. As always, we'll post a replay of this webinar along with a transcription on our website early next week. Now, there's a lot of thought leadership out there, along with a lot of theories about how to deliver customer success. The Mastermind series allows us to focus on the practical and give you real-world advice, best practices, techniques, shared experiences from those out in the wild practicing customer success on a daily basis. To do that, we invite 3 panelists to join me for a roundtable discussion. These are people who are great at their craft, and we ask them to share their experiences and their perspectives. Now, this learning event is for you, and we will be taking questions, so get ready to use that Q&A functionality at the bottom of your Zoom window to ask or upvote a question. We're also broadcasting on LinkedIn Live and monitoring that thread, so any questions posted will be relayed to us as well. Also, please remember to use chat for commentary, not for questions. Now, without further ado, I'd like our panelists to introduce themselves to y'all, to talk a bit about who they are and what they do. So let's get started as usual in alphabetical order with Courtney.
Hello. So happy to be here. Thank you for having me, Andrew. So my name is Courtney Laracy. I am a customer success manager with Pendo. I'm actually coming to you live from our user conference, which we did in person. So hopefully you can hear me okay. And maybe we'll get into that as part of a piece of etiquette that I may have messed up on. So hopefully I'm not starting that way. Have been in customer success for several years. I started in sales, although I think the type of sale was always customer success. So I learned consultative selling. That's more of my style anyway. So I feel like I've been doing this for a number of years that I don't want to tell you because then you'll know how old I am. So I work with Pendo. We work with product teams and we also work with CS teams. We're all about trying to improve the customer experience by understanding how your users are using your customer platform. So looking forward to getting into it with everyone. Thanks again for having me.
Awesome.
Oh, and
Thanks.
I'm based in London. So
it's based in London. And so it's late for you. So we very much appreciate you making time, especially during Pandemonium. And we're huge fans of Pendo. So I appreciate you making the time. Awesome. Jeremy, you're up.
Hey, everybody. I'm actually calling in live from Charlie Brown's living room, by the way, in case you didn't notice. So, yes, Jeremy Donaldson. I actually just recently made a move. I joined to Tango last week. I'm on day 8. So I'm a team lead for their small enterprise customer success group. So I'm still learning a lot, but I've spent the last 7 or so years in various CS roles, from renewals to customer success management to major accounts and digital segments. So super passionate. If there was one, we'll call it blessing of COVID, is it really allowed me to tap into things that I'm really excited about and want to share with others. So I'm very active in this CS community, and I also serve on the board with Gain Grow Retain. So it's been a wild ride the last almost 2 years of being a part of this, but I couldn't see myself doing anything else. And on a personal note, they won't be crashing the party today because they're all taking naps, but I do have 3 kids, a 4-year-old, a 2-year-old, and a 7.5-month-old. So when I'm not doing anything customer success, they are my customers within my house. So thanks for having me, Andrew. And I'm really looking forward to the discussion today.
That's the right way to approach it, Jeremy. Congrats on the new role. And yes, thank you for your contribution to the community. And how we're huge fans of Gain Grow Retain as well. Definitely one of our closest partnerships. So thanks for making the time. And finally, John from sunny Southern California.
Sunny Southern California. Yeah. And, based on that introduction, Jeremy, sounds like you're successful with your customers if they're napping right now. I can't get mine to sleep to save my life.
My wife is successful.
I am so far past that. So, thank God.
I love it. You miss it though, don't you, Andrew?
Not at all.
Not my name is John Johnson. Actually had a customer this week ask me if my name was real. It was great, because they thought it was coming from a fake spam account. So that's always a fun way to start the week off. But I work currently for PayPal under a sub-brand recent acquisition called Happy Returns. I've been in customer success for 10 or 11 years. My first business was music. I actually transitioned out of a career in music into working with customers, and I haven't looked back since. I think the thing that I love the most about what we do is the ability to connect across the entire world. Courtney's in Europe right now with technology, with these tools that solve incredible problems, and we get to work with passionate believers in our technology, and we get to build those relationships and find that energy. And I think those are kind of some of my favorite moments, is when you get that switch of like, hey, I bought your service, but now I love your service. And we all get to do that in various factors and various segments. It's what gets me up in the morning. It's what's kept me kind of in this industry. I think, was that all of it?
No, that's awesome. That's awesome. I feel the same way, man. I feel the same way. There's something incredibly rewarding about, people getting value from what you have to offer. And it's just personally, it's not about the financial reward. I'm talking about the personal reward, that personal satisfaction that you get from helping people move the needle.
Yeah, absolutely.
So no, I totally get it. But John, I think, I love the lapse back into your singing career, your musical career, at our party that we threw with GGR and client success during SaaStr. Thank you for breaking out the guitar and playing some tunes.
Yeah, it was great. We actually have another event with client success coming up in February. So awesome. If you wanted more CS and then the emotional guy with an acoustic guitar singing in the corner.
Or are you going to be? You're going to be.
Stay tuned.
Are you going to be in Sundance?
I am.
All right, awesome. We're there. We're platinum sponsors. We're there.
I love it.
Awesome.
Yeah.
All right. Well, look at that. Everybody's learning something. All right. Once again, we appreciate your time today. Let's get to the topic. We talk regularly about how important it is to employ the empathy component of our EQ. Well, the social skills component is just as essential in any customer-facing role. The message, the tone, the content, the delivery should always be thoughtful, refined, optimized to deliver the best possible customer reception and experience. In addition, understanding the proper etiquette and how to approach customer conversations will help you provide positive interactions and elevate that trusting relationship that we all want to achieve with our customers. So let's talk about etiquette. For example, one of my hot buttons, is using your personal Zoom room as a customer meeting room, right? Have you ever had a situation where you've dialed in, you found out this is the personal meeting room, and you get on and there's something happening?
Andrew, honestly, this has actually happened recently. I was interviewing and I jumped on another Zoom interview, and it was the most awkward, like, oh, we'll be with you in a moment. And it's like, well, I know who the competition is. It helped me because I did some, research on their LinkedIn. So it was pretty great, but it's so awkward. You have no idea, right? How many times have you jumped on a meeting and there's another customer there and you just don't know what to do? It's so awkward.
Well, I think you need to, and actually from taking that a step further, for Zoom etiquette, for example, you should be showing up early, right? Yeah. Which means that you are making that time that, controlling your calendar, controlling your schedule so that you can show up early to these meetings. Especially, like every customer meeting, you need to figure out how you show up at least 5 minutes early, right? Yeah. It's bad enough if you're disrespecting your peers and showing up to their meeting, within your organization, and showing up to their meetings late. But sometimes stuff happens, but you have to architect for that.
Yeah, and I think that kind of speaks to like the theme when we were talking about this in general. I was trying to think of what's the one general theme that I believe about this topic. And for etiquette, like, it's intentionality. Like, you have to. It doesn't just happen. And you're right, making space for these transitions from one meeting to the next. Just like you need to make space for, taking notes after your meetings, but making sure that every single customer throughout your entire day, no matter how busy, feels like you are there for them, and that you're not being rushed out of one meeting into the next. And then, oh my gosh, I got to hurry and hustle and go to the next one. That actually shows a poor time management skill on a CSM. If that's the vibe that customers are getting, and we can do so much better. I'd actually love to hear any other thoughts from Jeremy and Courtney on this as well.
I think a lot of this, and Stella has noted in the chat, like, we can use products to help us with this, right? Like Zoom, that's a Zoom setting. Like, they should just, that shouldn't happen. Like, there's a lot of tools that we have at our disposal to help prevent that. So I think that's a nice start on those types of things. But I think you're right, John. Like, it's also coming at it from a bigger, like, having some intention around how you want to present yourself, present your company, meet with your customers. And then I think that's a big piece of it too, is really, I think a lot of it has to be meeting your customer where they are. So matching their communication style. And if you can do that, I think that's the best way to have a good sense of etiquette and communication with the customer. I
love that, the matching the communication style. I have a client who's a chief customer officer, and I discovered early on in our relationship that I could email her, I could call her, I would get a response at some point, but I knew that if I texted her, I would get a near immediate response. She would be responding to texts to me. And if she's listening, she knows exactly who this is. She knows exactly who I'm talking about. But she would be responding to text me during board meetings. She was feeling the BORED of the board meeting. Jeremy, what do you think? What do you have to add to this? So.
Yeah, I love the idea of matching, right? And I think I grew up a little old school in business, right? If your customer shows up in a t-shirt, right, show up in a polo, like, kind of be, have that kind of set
one level above,
kind of one above, right? That's just kind of my mentality that I go through this. But I was going to say, listening to all of this, right, that one of my biggest pet peeves, and I'm guilty of this at times. So, right, I'm crucifying myself a little bit here, is how many meetings have you walked into where somebody drops 30 minutes on your calendar? It gives no purpose, and it gives you no heads up of what the meeting's about. They just want to meet with you. And then you get 10 minutes into the meeting and they drop a bomb on you and say, hey, we need to talk about this. And I'm like, you could have prepared. I could have come prepared to talk to this. We need more than 30 minutes of conversation, right? And around that expectation management, it's probably the one thing that I consistently see over and over again is, people are very, freewheeling about setting up meetings, but oftentimes don't give a lot of context to what they want to meet about. And so therefore, I have the wrong expectation of what they want to talk about. And then we end up, 30 minutes into a meeting, having wasted that time, and then have to come back again later in the week or the next week to, iron out, what we missed. So, that's probably my biggest pet peeve is if you're going to schedule time with me, I don't care if we run long, although I like to manage my time. I do want to know what you want to talk about so that I can come prepared for it.
Well, two best practices for that are, number one, to always set an agenda yourself for every single meeting with a purpose, right? That's something that you have to be in the habit of doing. Mm-hmm. And number two, decline all those meeting requests until they provide that. I mean,
yes.
Yeah.
I'm a big proponent. Like I'm aggressive when if I get a meeting from somebody and I ask, hey, let me know. I won't just like blind decline things, but if something comes in and there's no agenda, hey, let me know what this is about. And I'll set tentative, just kind of like I'm going to come, but I need you to let me know. And if they don't respond, if there isn't any like importance, and if there isn't anything in the back of my mind as the CSM knowing, oh, this is actually a red flag. This is what we're dealing with this customer. If there's no context, it's very hard to have those meaningful moments. But I actually wanted to challenge that a little bit, Jeremy, because I do think that there is a balance, right? When you're new, when you have new accounts and you don't really know your customers, I feel like, we got to set boundaries. We got to teach and train our customers how to communicate best with our brand. How do they get the best out of not just me, but my team and the organization that I'm representing? As you go 2-3 years down in the relationship, that's a very different etiquette. And I'd love to kind of hear some conversations around that. Like, man, day one, it's like rigid regiment. Yeah, I need the agenda, show up on time, match, all that kind of stuff that is so incredibly valid and valuable. But once you are the trusted advisor, I think that's when it gets kind of fun, right? And that's when you can really kind of explore and test and figure these things out. Courtney has an opinion, I can tell.
Yes, I can
see. We talked a lot about this previously, and I feel like with a lot of my customers, I do feel like I'm at that level now, which is wonderful. Like we have a relationship over a few years, and at this point, if I came on like with a very tight agenda, like that would be abrasive to them. They're like, whoa,
like what's going on?
Are you mad at us? Like, so I do think but as we discussed, I couldn't do that right at the beginning, and I couldn't do that in like a business review. I wouldn't show up in a business review and just, be so casual. So I guess, maybe there's a time and place. And I think a lot of this always comes down to the audience too. So
yeah.
If I know some customers would try it, I would.
The best practices are the whole point of this is let's put a stake in the ground on how you should be thinking about this, how you think, how you should be approaching this. But of course, just like everything else, your delivery is going to adjust as your relationship adjusts. The way I dealt with Wells Fargo at the beginning of my relationship, or at Charles Schwab at the beginning of my relationship, very different than when we were, when we were parting ways, right? We had established this rhythm. We knew each other, right? But this is part of getting to know each other.
Yeah, that's good. How do you do that? Like, how do you get to know your customers? Like, even on those new ones, like when we're sitting in Zoom calls now, we get to see the pictures on their back wall. We get to see, like all of these different things that we didn't used to see when we just sit in a conference room or an office when we're meeting in person. Like, what are some of the things that you do? And like legitimately, like etiquette wise, like without going too far or too less, to get to build that trust with your customers.
Well, one of the things that I did actually was something that I started when I would walk into their office. And the first thing I would do every time I'd walk in somebody's office, a new customer, is I'd scan the room.
Yeah.
What am I seeing on the, oh, hey, this person is clearly into golf. He's got the golf accessories posters, and he's got clubs in the corner. And oh, hey, I'm gonna jump into asking some open-ended questions, practicing some active listening, talking about golf. And we talked about golf for 45 minutes of the hour that we had together. And then 15 minutes, we talked about business, and the deal was done.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's good.
And I think now, like, we have so many resources, like you check their LinkedIn profile before you get on with them. Like, you should know those basics. And that's going to tell you, oh, you went to college in California, or whatever. Like there's always something that you could pull in to, again, to just start that conversation. And then you read them as you start just having a, open conversation and relating.
Yeah, know your customer. That's great etiquette as well. It shows, it demonstrates a level of respect. I respect you enough right out of the gate to actually do a little research.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, and I would add to what Courtney says on the research piece too, right? Leading by example, right? We should be the one setting the tone for the conversation. Not that we shouldn't be very active in listening, right? So once we set the tone, we need to step back and let the customer speak about what's important to them. But setting the tone, right? If we want the customer to be more open, then we have to be more open about who it is that we are. How do we operate? What do we like? What's going on in our worlds, in our life? It's why I shared, like, not just professionally what I do at the start of the call, but what's going on in my world, right? What is happening when I turn this camera off and I walk out of my office, right? What's the world that I'm walking into? And so if I want to know John or Courtney or Andrew better about what's going on, I've got to be willing to, be vulnerable and share, part of my background and find the balance, right, of what's appropriate and what's not, because there are things that, that do cross the line. And once you cross that line, it's really hard to get that back. But, there are, basic stuff that say, like, that's why, I called out my, Charlie Brown Christmas tree back here, because I'm a big Peanuts fan. So, and grew up with that. So, from that regard, thinking about how can you weave little things that you get excited about into the conversation based on, that research nugget that Courtney shared, and how can you marry the two of those things together to really, blossom that conversation? Because once they open up, Andrew, to your point, right, they'll be much more willing to talk about anything, even difficult things that they may not know the answers to.
Well, in order to, it's that ever, that search for achieving that trust, the trusted advisor status that we're always seeking out in our customers, to whatever degree that makes sense. For somebody to trust you, they need to, they need to understand you. Need to understand, and I think that personal side a bit too.
Yeah, and I think one of the things, I do this with work, if they're talking about milestones or any big projects, business wise, my notes are my lifesaver. Keeping notes of what's coming down the pipeline. I do the same thing with personal stuff. If there's something they're like, oh, me and the wife are going on vacation to Hawaii, in a month. Yeah. So that when they get back, like, I'm setting my calendar so that I look ahead and I say, well, this customer's out in 6 weeks. So, let's look ahead so that we can actually reschedule these things. But also when they come home, I want to hear all about that trip. Like, I want to know how it impacted their mental health and how, what the weather was like, as boring that may sound, but those are the types of things. And it does something psychologically. If somebody says something, hey, I'm doing this, and then 6-8 weeks later, maybe you haven't seen me. Maybe this is our bi-monthly sync, and I'm on the call and I go, Mike, like, how was Hawaii? Like, you just got back. Oh my gosh, lost my baggage. And it's just, it opens up and it builds such a level of trust that, like, this person, while we are taking notes and that might water it down a little bit, like, you're still wanting to have a meaningful conversation, and you want to make them feel like you value their, not just the keystrokes in their email, but also the way that they view the world. Because that is how we get, like, really in depth with our customers.
Well, it's you're practicing active listening.
Yep.
Right. You're demonstrating that you heard what they had to say, and you're repeating it back to them. Even though it's 6 weeks later, like, oh, wow.
Yeah.
John remembered. That's cool. Yeah. I want to talk about my vacation. Hopefully it's not about getting lost, bags lost. It's about something fun and positive. Right. But that's a great practice. Right. I also recommend, you're writing down if they mention their kids' names. I've had a couple of sharp CSMs ask me in follow-up calls about my daughter and her soccer. What she's doing with soccer this year, and those little things can help. Good.
Yeah.
You establish that connection with somebody.
Absolutely.
It's awesome. What other some other best practices? They don't need to be Zoom or what have you. I mean, we talked about a bunch of things. What other things come to mind?
I mean, I think for me, like, especially with this digital world, I'm often sitting on meetings with 5 or 6 people, and maybe there's somebody who doesn't have a camera on and you don't know who they are. I'm such a big fan of just the introductions, but also like the roles. What do they do? How do they like interface with whatever we're working on? So I spend a good amount of time on almost every meeting, making sure that if there's people in the room, everybody knows who this person is, so that questions don't just come out of left field. Like, I don't know who is this guy? He's asking me questions. I've never met him before. And that also helps with like updating records in Salesforce. Like, I'm such a clean freak when it comes to data that as soon as a new name is, like, I want it added to our Salesforce record or Catalyst or Gainsight or however you're managing your customers. Like, names and roles, while it's nice on the Zoom call so that people know where they're at, there's so much data that can be used for that, for cleaning your contacts.
What about, you mentioned cameras, right? You said cameras on versus cameras off. So let's talk about that. I think even if you've got a customer who refuses to turn their camera on, you need to be on every time, unless
I agree with you, Andrew.
Have some sort of connectivity issue. You need to have camera on. You need to be dressed and prepared for being camera on, and encourage others to turn their cameras on.
I go back and forth on this. Okay, yes, I think that we should have
challenge us.
Yes.
But if they turn their cameras off, I kind of go back to my point of meeting them where they are. And so then I just feel awkward being the only one on camera. So if they're off, then I go off. And I'm trying to like respect, like maybe they've been on Zoom calls all day and we could just be talking.
Well, wait a minute. Are you truly respecting, or are you just looking for an opportunity to turn your camera on?
That's a great. I want an honest answer.
On, I don't know.
Whether maybe you're on or off, how does that affect them?
I would add to Courtney's thing too, right? I think industry, depending on the industry that you work with, I think also lends into that, the camera on, camera off piece. I came from cybersecurity. Nobody in cybersecurity wants their camera on. Nobody. Okay. So, it's one of those things where it is meeting them where they're at, but that's literally what all of my customers did. Yeah. And it wasn't, it's not because they don't want to interact with you. They're semi-paranoid people about their privacy on the internet. So, it's one of the things where, as I'm working with customer success professionals now, right, I, anticipate a lot more people being on camera and that being a normal part of my life. But, when you're working with people in different parts of the business that just don't want to do that, you just, at some point, you just, you can fight it, or you can just go with what's going on there. But I would say for me, the one thing that I do ask for cameras on, and it's usually when you're doing executive business reviews, program reviews, and it's usually when we're doing introductions. I say, hey, come on, do introductions. If after introductions, you want to turn your camera off, that's fine. I'm not going to have you on for, 30, 60, 90 minutes and have to have your camera on the whole time. But when we are meeting new people, I'd like you to meet them, see them face to face. I'd like to meet you and see you face to face, since we can't be in the room together. And I haven't gotten a lot of pushback on when asking it in that context.
That's actually, I really like, Jeremy. That's awesome. I'm taking notes on that. Hopefully
if you do it well, the next time they're more apt to turn the camera on and leave it on for the entire meeting. Right. Yeah.
Well, I learned this from Andrew, actually, just in emails and prep and in agendas, saying, hey, I'm going to have my camera on, so that, you guys can see me. No pressure to put it on, but I'd love to, the importance of it for me, like, this is why I do it, is so that you can tell that I'm paying attention, that that I'm here with you, for you. And I'm a big fan of like looking at kind of, the growth. And if the first 6 months of your relationship, they don't have their camera on, part of that EQ of a customer success manager and that health score should be, 4 months in and they have their camera on and they're engaged and they're listening. And
I like that.
And you're seeing that and you're using that as a metric of what, however you build your health scores, but that shows engagement and that shows trust and growth. And maybe they're concerned at the beginning, but then it's getting a better relationship. And it's just a trigger point for me to say relationships is changing. And what is the reason for that? And that's how I kind of feed into that health score.
I love that. I love using the camera on as a metric. Hey, the camera's finally on. Awesome.
Yay.
Go, right?
Or, oh my God, turn it off.
Right. The relationship health is improving. Right.
Yeah.
How often is the camera on?
But if you have babies and cats and dogs, we all want to see those. That is it's not a reason to turn the camera off. Like,
I look at that as just like having stuff behind you, getting people to ask. I mean, it humanizes you. I don't necessarily even like the blur thing. I want to be able to see, before we moved into this place, the people would see all the sports memorabilia on my walls when I had conversations, and that led to so many openings, in these. Exactly what you wanted to do is that small talk about something other than business that gets you to connect with someone.
Mm-hmm.
Oh, there you go. Look at
Courtney felt convicted by
oh my gosh.
I'm in a phone booth, a literal phone booth in this conference area. So.
No, that's awesome. You got a phone booth. It's one of those. That's cool. Look at you.
We're in London. People are walking by.
Yes.
Nice.
Agatha called it out. Very TARDIS. Very TARDIS. That's awesome.
So let's anybody else want to jump in on either a best practice that you've been thinking about since we've been talking, or an experience that taught you more about etiquette before we start taking some questions?
This is a really minor comment, but on the camera piece, and this will be my closing comment, is I was not a big believer in ring lights prior to being virtual. But after one too many meetings where either I look like I'm like a masked individual on a call, or I've been on a meeting and you can't see their face. They're there. You see the outline, right? It's like a straight up CSI scene, right? I'm a big proponent. If you're gonna be on camera, you're gonna make the investment into it. Either get a camera that's got a built-in light into it, or buy better lighting, or move your desk so that they can see your face. It's a really minor thing, but it goes a long way. So people don't have to guess, right? Do you have facial hair? You're bald, right?
No, I think you're right.
Have a good mic too.
Yeah.
Either built into the camera, or, you don't have to go this fancy. This is what I do for a living. But you should have a good mic, because it's just as good etiquette to allow people to actually hear what you have to say.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, I'm with you on that. Like setting the stage. I'm an artist as well. So there's a guy in the chat, Francis, who's does filmmaking or something. And it's I love finding people that do things outside of work and then how they apply it to work. And you get in and I used to have I'm in a garage right now because we're moving. But, I had 3 different lights with the key light in the back, and you had the microphone, and then you had the stand. And I spent so much time on it. And people always commented, they remark on it. It's oh, your audio sound, I can hear you clearly, or I can see, the depth or whatever it is. And people care, they like it when people care about what they're doing. And I think that's one way that we can put our best foot forward in a digital way, is to say, you're going to be staring at my face, and you probably have Zoom fatigue from squinting at dark rooms and trying to turn up, the mics. Let's make it easier on you.
Yeah. I mean, at this point, it just should be part of your office equipment. You get your laptop and you get your light, we're all on Zoom, and you can see, I even brought mine to the conference there.
Oh, you do?
I try every time. I just look like this.
I love that. Yeah, that's good. Yeah, all my stuff is still boxed up, but that's the plan for the barn, is to build out an actual studio, because people are seeing me a lot on video, and and you might as well make it as nice of an experience as possible. But it doesn't require a studio. To your point, just even a simple ring light.
Yeah.
Whatever it takes. All right, cool. So let's.
Wait, can I air my grievances?
Oh yes, air your grievance, Courtney, and then we'll jump into questions, please.
Okay,
is it Festivus?
Well, yes,
it is. The airing of grievances.
There you go. All right, the airing.
Everybody gather around the Festivus pole.
Okay, so mine, and this is a plug that I've been working on for a while. So mine is all about working internationally. So I moved from our San Francisco office to London, and a lot of things start coming up with that. When you have a distributed team, which a lot of us do, globally distributed teams, globally distributed customers, And my biggest pet peeve is when people send an email and they make them convert the time zone. Like your recipient should get your request in the time zone that they live in. Like don't make them do the calculation. And then also with the dates. So the date format, like 6/7/21. Is that July 6th or is that June 7th? It depends on who you're talking to, unless you just say June 6th or 6th June. And this was a big deal that came up for me. We had a customer that was, it just kind of elevated, and they had a big problem that we were working to solve for a long time. Our engineers developed like a great solution for them, wrote up a white paper. It was amazing. We're so excited to send it to them. This was in December. So I think it was like dated 12/3. So I sent it to it and I'm like, yes, we're going to turn them around. This is so exciting. And 2 days later, I get like an angry email. How could you have held this from me since March? Like that, like hurt my relationship actually, just like that little piece. And I didn't catch it either. I should have caught it. Okay. But like that is etiquette and how like a very small thing can actually be a big deal.
Yeah. That's good. Good learning. Good learning moment there for you and for everybody else. Be cognizant of who you're dealing with, wherever they are in the world.
Yeah, and some folks have brought up matching in the chat quite a few times, and like it seems so easy, but it's one of the hardest things to do because you're right. Like we have customers all over the world, and culture and communication, time, the way that you write the date is different. Yeah. And I like that's probably the hardest part. There's a lot of tools that make that easier, right? And I'm a big fan of setting time zones and stuff like that. But like, what do you do, Courtney, specifically, like when you're dealing with a French customer who has a person in the US that has to be on the meeting at the same time, and how are you navigating and communicating and aligning things in a way that makes sense for everybody?
Well, I think then you give their time zone and then you give the next person's time zone. And so you give and you give it in the format that they understand. So that might be, in the same form, whatever the time zone is.
John, look at this one. Courtney, look at this one.
Right. / whatever that would be. Probably 8 a.m. California.
Yeah.
And if the French person is the stakeholder, then I'll also write like California, because they might not know. They might not know what PST means or PDT.
Right.
So.
Yeah. And I was going to even add too, right? If you think about working with APAC customers, using UTC, right? I just got into the habit. Anybody that was west of the United States, I just did UTC plus whatever, right? In the email, which is not normal, especially in North America. Nobody uses UTC in North America, but if you do work with those customers or are going to work with those customers, that's probably the easiest way, right? To convert the time is just saying, hey, you're UTC +8, and that would be the time that we would meet. So that was, Europe is a little bit more forgiving, just because a lot of them that if you're working with Europe, they know they have US counterparts as well, more than likely. But APAC is a little bit trickier because they don't necessarily have the naming convention like we do here in the States.
All right. Learn your UTC.
That's the takeaway. Learn UTC.
They're learning UTC. There's the takeaway. All right, let's get to some of these questions. Remember, please ask questions in the queue using the Q&A button at the bottom of your screen, or look at what's there and upvote questions that are already sitting there. So let's see the question that's bubbled up to the top. We're going to tackle first from Justin. What is the etiquette when a client wants to pivot to different feature during onboarding, but it's important for them to move through a process in a certain order? Is it really an etiquette thing, or just a, hey, guy, we got to do this first?
Well, I think that,
right?
I think this comes down to expectation setting, right? Look, most of our customers are coming out of the customer's always right and into a service-based industry, right? So a lot of times they're like, just do what I tell you. Like, I'm paying you. Right. Like, we still see that, right? And I think we're so keyed into our methodology and our process. We've got a playbook and we've done all of this work. that the customer has not seen, right? And so I think it's important. You can beat that initially by saying, you're going to want to jump ahead. You want to jump to the end, but this is the process that we have seen. Like, my title is customer success for a reason. My job is to make customers successful. And I think setting the tone and saying, take all the notes that you can. Yeah. Address the point positively, but say, like, this is when we're going to get to it. We'll get there on Thursday or on our next scheduled meeting. Hold tight, because all of this stuff up here leads into the success of what you're talking about. You have
to explain to them why we do things the way we do things.
Yeah. Right? There's a reason. Yeah.
Yes. Yeah. This isn't Wild Wild West.
Yeah. And just empathy. Like, because they just spent tens of thirties of hundreds of thousands of dollars, depending on the software. Like, they want value. That's their job, is to extract value from this. So every customer that I worked with is like, how can we push, right? How can we get this done faster? That's always the question.
It's always, that's what we want to do. It's all about fast time to value, right? That's what we're motivated as well as you are, but this is the way to fast value. Right.
Yeah.
Right. And so it's educating them on that. And then, setting those expectations and following through with those expectations. Courtney, Jeremy, anything to add?
I mean, I think you just pivot it. Like, you acknowledge, like, oh, I'm so excited that you want to see that feature. It's fantastic. But look, like, for you to get the full value here, I want to take you through this process. Otherwise, it's just not all going to come together. So just hold on to that. Love that you're thinking this, and then work through it.
Exactly.
Yeah. No, I don't have anything to add on this one, Andrew. It's great.
Right. Good. All right. We got 1 of 16 answered. Hey, thanks, Justin.
Nice.
Ryan asks, how do you handle staying in your lane, not taking on support issues and passing the client off to the support team so you can focus on being a CSM?
Oh, you tell me, Ryan. You can host that next one.
Oh, wow. That's just got upvoted like 4 more.
Yeah, everybody
asked that question. So,
wow. Yeah. So it depends. I think it's organization size dependent too, right? I think if you're in a smaller company,
maturity,
it's really hard, right? And I'm working for a smaller company right now, it's going to be really hard. There's going to be overlap of responsibilities, although, there are some things that you can delegate, right? When you're a one person crew or you're a very small group of people, you kind of just have to come together and make things happen, right? For your customers. When you're with larger organizations, or at least organizations that are more mature in how they have their, the department set up, right? It's about figuring out that balance, right? If you have a customer, and I can think of one that, just a couple of years ago, constantly dealing with, he would always come to me, right? I would be the first point of contact for support stuff. And I asked him why he did that. Like, why did he keep coming to me as their customer success manager? And he basically was like, well, you're more responsive than support is.
I knew that was the answer too, Jeremy.
Yeah. And I said, well, you do understand, when you come to me first, I now become the middleman between you and our technical support team. And therefore it takes 2 or 3x longer to get the information you need to actually be successful, right? The better way to do that is go to support first and set the expectations around our SLAs. What's the response times around that, and continue. Every time he would come to me in a support case, I just started saying, hey, you need to open it here. You need to open it here. And I was consistent for about 2 months until he finally got it and realized that I wasn't going to answer the question directly for him anymore. But when he felt that it was outside of our SLA or it was urgent, I said, that's when you bring it to me, right? That's where I can be the business escalation for you. Because I don't want to be, right, for me to be valuable to you, right? I need to understand what your goals are you're trying to accomplish. And if I'm constantly in the weeds about, functional technical issues in our database about data or how you're pulling stuff out, right, I won't have any time to help you actually achieve your goals and where you're trying to go. So for me, it was, it's just about getting in repetitive behavior, right? Setting that expectation and then doing it, and don't waver from it, right? Continue to come back to that, because eventually, right, either your customer will train, or, they're not going to be happy, and maybe you're the wrong CSM and ask somebody else to take over at that point.
And it's something that also, it's an expectation you want to set from the get-go as well.
Yeah.
Right. It's one thing you definitely need to inform and send them off. This is where you need to go first. And then if it needs to be escalated, if we miss an SLA, then send me the trouble ticket ID and I'll be there for that. But this is not
And
like you said, it actually is taking you longer. It's taking us longer to address this.
I think that's the key. You have to lead with the benefit to them. Like just be straight. Like, listen, you're not going to get what you want from me as quickly as if you just go to support. And so it's better for you. Trust me, you'll get your answers answered quicker. So.
Yeah. One of the things that I like to do, I'm a big fan of postmortems, not necessarily on every single ticket that comes through, but if there is something that is elevated, that is escalated, that's important, getting everybody that touched the ticket, that got everything on, kind of working as the air traffic controller to say, this was the problem, this was the expected outcome, this is what happened. And then looking and matching it with SLAs. Like we're talking about etiquette, right? So it's like, you don't want to be the guy that's like yelling at support. It's like, answer the ticket. There's like a really good way to bring up these problems in a way that is not accusatory, because you just don't know. It could have been a bug. It could be stuck with product. You just don't know, right? Support is this kind of nebulous black hole of stuff, and they manage so much stuff, right? So getting the team, the folks that worked on it, it's like, hey, this ticket, was 24 hours outside of SLA. Like, walk me through what happened. Like, walk me through that process. Like, where's the hole and where's the gap? And looking at it as a constant need that will eventually trickle down to the customer, but never a pointing fingers or accusing, or just getting to the heart of the issue of saying, yeah, this was a bug and the ticket got submitted and it got delayed and we didn't communicate that with the customer. It's like, great, there's a hole. We can fix that so that the next time a customer has a problem, they won't come to me, because we're patching these holes as we go along. And if we're constantly, as CSMs, turning a mirror to the process that is affecting our customers, not only are we an effective external customer success manager, we're also an incredibly effective internal stakeholder for our customers, because we're supposed to be advocating for them. We're supposed to be the guys and the gals that are saying, shit's not working. Sorry, I swore. Things aren't working. How can we fix this? And how can we make it better? And we get into that constant state of upgrading and changing and growing and new processes.
Because customer success is evolving, constantly evolving.
Yes. Yeah. Exactly.
It's such a big piece of our role. Like that, it's not only the external, are we having etiquette with our customers, but it's how we can coach the rest of the organization to make sure that all their interactions are satisfying our customer too. So yeah, I think that's a great point, John. Like, it's not go ahead.
We're like the ones that handle customer experience. Like, I know that's not our title, but how the customer, not the buttons and the widgets and all that kind of stuff, but how they experience Pendo and how they experience Totango. And we're the ones that get that feedback of saying, like, the sales guy was awesome, your support's not good, your product keeps telling, like, those are all pieces of information. And it's not, you don't have to take them personally or as an accusation, but as data points, so that when you're in that meeting and you're advocating for your customer with your managers and your executives for your customer stories or use cases, you actually have a very good perspective of saying, yeah, you've got this guy is like 100% with a health score, but I know for a fact he's pissed at our product team because they promised him this feature that got delayed, as they always do, right? Like, it's all a part of that, and it all comes down to how you build that rapport.
Well, and it's, once again, back to your point, it's your responsibility, right? It's not your responsibility to fix everything, but
it's why you have a job.
This is part of what your role is. Those postmortems are super important, right? Customer success is a team sport, not just the customer success team, the entire freaking company, right? And if there are deficiencies in what we are doing, then we need to highlight those so that we can either address them or we can reset expectations with our customers so that those deficiencies don't cause problems and heartburn for them and slow time to value and all of that.
Because if one customer is feeling it, that there's hundreds that are not talking about it.
Yeah. We got into that again with like the international issues. So I was getting a customer, like, overall their account was very happy, but he was so frustrated because every time he would submit a ticket, the next step would be to troubleshoot, would be like, let me have access to your account. And it was it was not the European, it was the US. And so anyways, it took like 3 extra days for that. And it's such like a simple, silly mistake that our support team just didn't realize because they have a lot to do. So I brought that to the team, and now there's like an automated thing in the product. Like, if that comes in, there's like a alert that comes in through Zendesk. Please note this customer is in.
You developed a rule to address that particular situation.
Yeah.
Right? You saw a hole in the boat and you patched the hole.
Yeah.
Yep.
All right.
I love that.
Ryan, thanks for the question. All right, that's 2. We got 2 and we have 20 left.
Plenty of time.
Juliana asks, and I would love, Juliana, if you could provide some examples. How do we deal with troubled customers?
Oh, man. I think we all have
that's
examples.
A really open-ended question there.
Jeremy reassigns them, right?
No, actually, no. The story is I got all the trouble customers in every role that I've ever been a part of. They all, I seem to attract that. I think it's just maybe it's my natural tendency to want to take on a challenge or something. But no, it was it's when I ask for those customers to be moved. Right. If they've moved out of that phase or out of that challenge, that's usually where I run into problems. But I think answering the question around how do you, every trouble customer, in my opinion, has been, I don't like using the word trouble customer. They're challenged with, they've got process limitations, they've got people limitations, or they've got knowledge limitations. It generally falls into one of those 3 buckets when they come to you and they have the wrong expectation of how easy your product is to use. They thought they had processes built internally that they don't have, or they bought it for a specific purpose that's not supported. And so for me, it's whenever I get handed a customer that's escalated, that is the first thing that I like to start with that customer is I go into the meeting and I said, I came with my notepad. All I want you to do is walk me through what your challenges are. I want from the front to the very beginning, all the way to the back. I want you to do, and sometimes it's just an unloading session. Sometimes it's just them to air their grievances, right? It's their Festivus, so to speak.
Their Festivus.
But I have found over and over and over again, when you give the customer the space to share what's going on and the challenges, sometimes it is our product stuff. Sometimes it's external stress to them that they're taking out on, their, a lack of knowledge of the product, or the product's just not where they thought it would be for that point in time, or they didn't understand the process. But, once you can do that, right, giving them as much space as they need to air that out, then you can go deeper, ask clarifying questions. And then you figure out, then you can really hone in, right? I think actually challenging customers can be quicker to build trust in, especially if you can learn that stuff up front and address it quickly, because they'll be very honest with you what's going on and what's wrong in doing that. But I would say don't treat any 2 trouble customers, and I would actually stop using that word altogether, right? You're challenging customers, right? They're going to challenge you to mature as a CSM. They're going to challenge your organization to mature as a CSM, right? But if you go in with the mindset of, I know there's challenges, I want to partner with you, and I want you to tell me everything that's going on. So, and then let's prioritize this and go back. That's the way that I would approach it. John or Courtney, I don't know if there's anything you would want to add from your perspective on that.
And my dad always called it a hot air balloon. Like you can't fill a hot air balloon that's full. You have to let all the air out, right, before you can put anything else in it. And I mean, I follow the same practice. I love what you said though. The most difficult customers are the best when you win them over.
100% agree.
I'm sure we all have those examples, but they're some of my favorites. I'm like you. I get a lot of the difficult customers, and I think people look at my experience and like, oh, this guy can handle it. And I'm like, I just don't want people to be mad at me. But there's so many examples where you get on a call and the customer's hot, and you take note of that. And kind of going back to the health scores of like looking at the incremental growth over time, like you have the problem. Most customers don't tell you their problem. They're happy and they're cheery on it, but you don't know. Something's kind of burning in the background. Like you just don't know. I love customers that are vocally angry because they tell you what's wrong and they tell you what you need to fix. And you have a very clear path forward to say, no, I can't do that for you. Or actually, yeah, let's fix this. Right. And then you're good. You just kind of move it down the line from kind of milestone and goalpost to goalpost.
But I think that, and I just want to make sure it's going beyond just, hey, I'm a hero, I saved the day, I solved this problem.
Like they found value in the platform.
Right. And then they found value in all that stuff. But back to what you said, that they can become some of your biggest or most trusted relationships, is that process of you sitting down and letting them air their grievances, right? And asking the open-ended questions and practicing the active listening and restating what they're saying, because they're like, hey, this person's, it's not just that you're there with your notebook and your pen, you're actually listening to them. You're processing this, you're attaching that emotional element to it. They feel like you're listening, they will get connected with you. Right. They're like, hey, this is somebody that I think I'm going to establish a better relationship with.
Yep.
I love everything you guys said. Plus one, the only thing I would add is remember, you're not alone. So when you do get in these situations, it shouldn't be just on you, the CSM, to repair this relationship. Like, you're representing the company. And so that means you're bringing in either leadership or product, or you don't have to do it all on your own.
Very true. Very true.
And be vocal. I think as a CSM, right, if we're talking about etiquette, it's your job to be super vocal about your customers and what's going on with your customers. And if people aren't getting behind you for that, that's where you use your director, your VP, to help you manage that in that process, right? But I think, Courtney, that's a great point about, don't you win as I know it's cliche, right? You win as a team, you lose as a team, right? But it really is true when it works with customers. Don't try to bear all that weight yourself, because that's how you lead the burnout, right? You try to do it all by yourself.
Well, and that's when things break too. Like, single point of failure. Like, to your point, both of your points. If you lose a customer and you report that churn up to your VP or head of CCO or whatever you're reporting it to, like, what did you do? Oh, I did it all by myself. I tried everything, and it's like, I've got 27 other people on your team, from product to, all of these people that we could have helped you with.
Right.
Like, is there a path here? Like, you want to make sure that you're exhausting all of your options. And speaking, I love vocal. Oftentimes I'm too vocal. But I think that no. But you have to be, because the customer isn't meeting with the CCOs or the VPs or all of them. They should be meeting with some of them.
And they probably didn't come into the company just by one person.
Yeah.
Think about this process, like how many people are involved to bring them in as a customer. So
you're not going to get, you get no points for trying to put it all on your own back and doing it by yourself. Go figure out. It's one of the first things when you join a company, you should be figuring out, okay, who are the people that I need to, that I may need to depend on in order to get this stuff done. So Juliana, thank you. Thanks for the question. Great question. Let's move on. By the way, just a reminder, we're going to keep going here until 15 past the hour. And it looks like we're going to need every minute of that, because we still have 22 open questions. So, we'll go till 15 past the hour, so you can stick around. Lauren asks, someone mentioned time management and the etiquette around managing your calendar. How do you deal with a client that continues to ask questions, make requests when you've advised that you have a hard stop? What is the best etiquette to complete that meeting without making them feel as if they aren't important?
I think the etiquette comes before that moment.
Yeah, for sure. I actually set for half-hour meetings, I make them 25 minutes. There's a thing in Google Calendar, so I do 25-minute half-hour meetings. I do 50-minute hour meetings, and that gives you that buffer, I've found. So at that 25-minute mark, okay, that should give me enough time to kind of wrap things up.
Yeah. I think there's going to be those examples where that customer needs attention, though. Like, to be honest, like, we've all been in that, where you've got a hard stop and you just uncovered something, and you found like that thing that you've been looking for. And there's going to be a time in your life where in your professional career, where you have to say, I gotta ignore my hard stop. Hey, give me a minute. I'm going to push this next meeting. And there's an etiquette there.
Yes.
That doesn't happen in that moment. And that's what we're talking about. This whole building up of trust and value and all this kind of stuff is that if you haven't put any money into that bank account, when you say, guys, I'm so sorry, I know this starts in a minute, but I got to push if they don't have any deposits in that bank account for them to withdraw on, they're going to be pissed. and they're going to feel pushed off. But if they know you, if they have that relationship, Courtney, that you were talking about, then they're going to be like, all right, look, my girl's got me. Like, we'll free up your time. We'll find another time. But it all starts on day one when you meet the customer and setting that expectation and building that trust and that etiquette, so that when you have to break etiquette, because you will always have to, you'll always forget something. A meeting agenda will get missed. A bullet point will get dropped. A report won't get sent. If you've done your job well, and if you set the processes of all of these things that we're talking about, when that happens, it's not a red flag. It's not a fire.
You've established credit. You establish credit with the customer, right?
Yep. But that's a tough one.
It's expectations, setting the right expectations, managing those expectations. You establish that goodwill, so that when that type of thing happens, you can adjust. Because I do. It's the example that you gave, though, where you basically have a black swan occurring, right?
Yeah.
Exactly. You know what I'm talking about with Chris Voss's black swan, right? You get a black swan occurring. Yeah, that is definitely something where you're like, okay, I got to push off this other meeting. And that's where that credit occurs. But those black swans at the end of a meeting, I mean, we're talking about something that's a bit fringe, but it's a good example of how that etiquette, following some etiquette and that credit that you've built up in the bank with them pays off.
Yeah.
Yep. Absolutely.
And Courtney, I don't know if there's something you're going to add. I was going to comment on John's.
No, go ahead, please.
Yeah. So I think from my perspective on this, I think I agree, right? I liked what you said, right? There's going to be moments where you're going to have to break typical etiquette in a meeting. And I think it's spot on, right? It's not going to happen often, but it shouldn't do the things that we talked about earlier, right? Building buffers into your schedule, right? Setting expectations, right? That should avoid a lot of that. But I was thinking too, right? In the beginning of the meeting, right? When you get in and you think you have kind of you sense that this conversation might go long, or it's a customer that always runs up to the end of the meeting, just set the expectation to say, hey, look, we've got this hour. We will get through all that we can within this hour around the topics that were preset. If we get to the end of the hour and we haven't covered everything, the action item is I will set up another 30 minutes with you before the end of the week, or, if it's on a Friday, early next week, and we will close out the items that are on this agenda, so that you keep your customer on time. You're not having to push stuff out, right? And it values their time. And if you set that, that's the way I like to start. It's like, here's the agenda. Is there stuff that you want to add? By the way, right, per our normal meeting cadence, right, we have the stop at the half an hour. So if we need to go long, I'll just, we'll take that last 5 minutes and we'll coordinate a time for us to meet again within the next few days. And then, just set the expectation and just make sure you take your notes to that second meeting to say, here's what we talked about last time. Let's pick up where we left off. If you can do that, that's what I would recommend. But if you can't, right, do your best to buffer in extra time in your schedule between meetings, so that if the customer wants to go long and you can go long, you can accommodate that without having to push anybody off.
Yeah. And I think, just to state the obvious, and then you got to follow up on that. That's where that trust comes from. You do that a couple of times, the third time or fourth time that happens, that customer's like, oh yeah, no worries. Like, he's going to schedule, we're going to get these questions answered. I like that.
Awesome, Lauren. Thanks for the question there and all the upvotes. Okay, the next one comes from Gilbert. How to politely handle clients that need to meet repeatedly. I share my calendar link with clients, so difficult to stop it from happening in the first place. So you got a customer that just like, hey, I want to meet with you tomorrow, and the next day, and then there's this. They're meeting with you a lot more often than you'd expect. How do you do? Any of you ever have that challenge before?
I mean, I love it talking to my customers. but
I'm thinking what Gilbert's talking about is the same customer over and over and over again in subsequent meeting, booking a lot of time on your calendar.
Yeah, I actually have I'll keep this as short as I can. I inherited an account about a year and a half ago from a CSM that was leaving, and she met with this customer once an hour a day, every day, every work day of the week. So she had 5 hours of meetings scheduled. And when I took over, it just was not realistic, or my plate was already full enough. And so my first meeting, I sat with them like, I'm not this person, by the way. I know you were meeting with her five times a week, right? Can we have a discussion about what was in that agenda that was so valuable to you that you needed to meet 5 times a week? And it was in a 30-minute conversation, I got him to go from 5 times a week to 2 times a week. And those meetings often were, 15 minutes or less, and those 2 meetings that we had. And it was just all about asking the question of, do we really need 5 meetings a week? And what's the value that you're getting out of it? Right? What's the purpose of these meetings? And so it was, I had to have that really difficult conversation because, I was stepping into expectations set by somebody who walked before me.
Right.
But out of result of that and getting fewer meetings, we were able to increase the value per meeting, which then it got to the point where, he stopped showing up. We were meeting 2 weeks and sometimes he wouldn't show up to one of the meetings, and he'd be like, I know things are covered. I know things are taken care of. Like, I don't have escalations to bring you. And so that, I'm not saying that's a perfect scenario and everybody's going to walk into that, right? It's not going to be all rainbows and flowers and butterflies, but sometimes it's you got to ask the difficult question of the why. Like my 4-year-old daughter asked me why about every little decision I make, in our entire life and our family. So sometimes it's good to ask the why question. Why are we doing this way? What's the value you're getting out of it? And then, if it proves itself out, then figure out how to continue it. If it doesn't prove itself out, take the opportunity, especially if you're new CSM, to hit the reset button. I don't think you're going to get a better time to hit a reset button than when you're brand new to an account. And you can take that time to ask that up front.
It's an opportunity to reset expectations.
And I feel like that's a big thing with CS, like even, outside of management, when you're like an IC, you're going to be getting a lot of transition accounts. People are going to leave. They're going to get promoted. There's going to be reshuffling of books, new regions, however you want to, break it down, and getting that. Well, how did, that handoff between CSMs, like, oh, I ran a meeting 5 days a week. Like, why did you do that? And getting like, it's such an awesome opportunity for customers to have different experiences with the brand, but also for you to try either matching what was done before, if it works, or, trying something new from your toolbox.
Yeah. And I love just getting to the heart of why are we doing this? I mean, that would be my question back to Gilbert. Like, why does he need to meet repeatedly? Does that mean like he needs more of a technical session? Do we need some service? Like, what's going on that we need to meet so often? If that's not the norm with your customer base.
And then, conversely to that, how do you handle clients that don't respond to your emails? Also another question from Gilbert. I had one where, if I didn't get a customer to respond to me after 3 emails to them, for whatever we were talking about, my 4th one was, once again, something out of the Chris Voss book about, I guess this isn't important to you right now. Why don't you let me know when it is moving forward, or something along those lines, right? Respectful, but kind of putting the onus on them, right?
Yeah, I follow the same. We're under a big project right now where we're trying to capture some data from all of our customers, and the rule is how many follow-ups, and I think that's the rule of 3 kind of follows my methodology, where if they don't respond, it's been 3 weeks and I've sent I know how email works. I know you saw it. Right. You're staring at that inbox all day long. So it's not important, and so we prioritize that. But the key to that, and I think this comes to internal etiquette, and this is, I think, a topic that maybe we haven't talked about as much, but if your bosses and your boss's bosses, if this data or this information that you need is required, if they need it, and you're not communicating the steps that you're going through to capture that data, I think you're missing something, because you also have to show the value up the chain internally to say, like, I have tried. And that's when you can say, hey, boss, how about you reach out this time? Let's have the manager reach out if this is required. But it's going to piss him off if John just emails him 10 times in a row, right? And that's kind of where we're at. It's like, okay, I tried. He didn't respond. They didn't respond. They're going to see manager in the title next. And then they're going to see director in the title next. And however that chain works, until, like, if it's a required information, if I need this data to be my job, to do my job, or for you to do your job, like, there's going to be those escalation points. And I think you're right. I think it's not important. If it's not important to you, how do we make them see it as important because of the value that we're trying to extract from this?
Right. Like I would question what is like, maybe it's not important to them. So do we need to recraft the message? Like they're not seeing value in this. And are they like, then I think you just have to get creative and change your messaging or change your strategy or think about, do you actually need this from? Are you just like trying to get a meeting with them just to talk to them? And yeah, but it's December and they're going to be leaving anyways. Like stop pressuring them unless you have something.
Remember, just because you think this customer is disengaged doesn't necessarily mean that they're disengaged. Yeah. Right. And I love what Laura put in the chat, which I think people they forget that this thing works for phone as well as email. Okay. So if it's, could you
explain that to me, Andrew?
If it's called a smartphone. Okay. So if they're not reaching out to you, they're not responding, you pick up the phone and call them. Yeah. Leave them a voicemail. Sometimes we forget about that. We have that in our toolbox. Yeah. So good call out there, Laura. So we only got a few minutes left.
That makes me anxious.
Yeah.
You know what we used to do?
You're such a liar, John. You're such a liar. Do you have any etiquette tips for people that are only speaking to their customers through emails or messages? I think you need to, if you're asking for your customer to do something, or it's a particularly challenging situation that you're addressing, I think you need to step away and then come back and reread it and be thinking about it from how is my customer going to respond to this? Or it doesn't even be your customer. This is it's business or it's personal. How is the person, from what I know about this person that I'm setting this to, how do I think they're going to respond to this? How are they going to read this?
Yeah. And have somebody, right? If you're not confident in yourself, I'm really glad I worked for somebody early in my CS career that was very supportive in this regard. But if you're writing an email, any written communication, he would offer, he was like, send it to me. I'm happy to be a second pair of eyes, right? You don't even have to be your boss. It could be a peer who's senior to you, who's been doing this for a while. It can just provide it, and they can call out you call it the sharp corners in your messaging, right? That they can soften it, right? They can change the word. It can be putting back on message. I would say, right. I'm thinking about, it sounds like you have a digital touch type engagement with your customers too. So it's really important that you map out what that journey looks like too, right? Not just sending arbitrary emails or answering their questions as they come through, but being very targeted from the day they onboard, to the day that they renew, and what type of communication, how you want it communicated, and what that looks like. And that, may be above and beyond just what you're doing with those customers, and may require other people in the organization to help you. But, don't just answer their questions, but see how you fit into the larger communication strategy for those customers as well.
Yeah. Marketing, leverage marketing with copy. Review all that stuff, have them review your copy, make sure it sounds good, looks good, but also, once again, especially with the even high touch, when you automate, right? Make sure that you are reviewing the stuff that you're sending out with an ear of the customer, right? Thinking about how you think the customer is going to interpret from what what you're saying. And with that, we've run out of time. I can't believe we only answered 6 of 19 questions. This was a popular one. We should probably do this again next year, I think. Yeah.
Game.
Yeah. Well, we're at the end of the webinar. I think it went well, but it's not what I think. It's what all of you think. So please let us know by posting your feedback on LinkedIn and tagging either myself, any of my great guests, and or Success Coaching. And I want to thank my amazing guests for spending the time with us, and for the ideas, the thoughts, the insights, and the best practices that you shared. Happy holidays to all of you. I wish you the best this holiday season and a great New Year's. One final note: great CSMs know that they don't have all the answers, but they know where to get them. That's why we created this mastermind program to harness the knowledge and experience of the community to help improve everyone. So we'll see you again next year with our first mastermind event of 2022 on January 19th, when we'll discuss being the first CSM in an organization. Once again, until next time, happy holidays to you and yours. Have a great rest of your day, week, and year. Stay safe and stay healthy, everyone.